Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Dental Assistant meeting. My name is Tracy Reed Espinoza. I'm the chair of the Dental Assistant Council. Today is Thursday, May 18th, 2023. This is an official meeting of the Dental Assistant Council. The council welcomes public comments on any items on the agenda, and it is the council's intent to ask the public comments prior to the council taking action on any agenda item. Depending on the number of people who will be likely to testify on particular agenda items, total time limits may be imposed. We ask all speakers please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with testimony already provided, you may state your name and that you support any comments on the previous provided. If a time limit is determined to be necessary, please keep your comments within the time limit. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask the board staff to call the order to roll.
Good morning. My name is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins.
Robbins present.
Fowler.
Fowler present.
Olagi. Absent. Pacheco.
Pacheco present.
Pliss. Absent. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza present.
Miyasaki.
Miyasaki present.
A quorum has been established.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item number 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. Before we open the public comments on matters not on the agenda, I would like to remind everybody that public comments should be addressed to the council as a whole and not to an individual member. Please be aware public comments during the agenda item should provide information to the council members, but it is not a discussion between council members and the public. The only action the council members can take right now is to listen to the comments and decide whether they want a future agenda item on this topic. This seems as a time that the council members are not being responsive following these guidelines is a criteria to ensure the rules of Open Meetings Act are followed and avoid compromising the speaker's goals and the council's mission. In the interest of time, excuse me, as we have done in the past, we would like to request that the public comments not repeat the statement prior to the commenting. If we are in support of a statement made to a prior individual and your comments have already been made, you may state your name or association and your support for the previous comment. Legislative hearing regularly uses this practice as it is a good way to ensure that we can hear from everyone today. Are there any public comments? I see that there are no public comments. Thank you. We will now move on to item number 3, discussion of possible action on February 9th, 2023 meeting and minutes. Is there any council member discussion at this time?
Vice Chair Miyazaki, just a couple of corrections on page 5 of the meeting materials, second paragraph, line 5. It says report to the last academic years, and it's just the last academic year, not plural. On the same paragraph, line 6, the next line down, it starts out with general assistant graduates, and it's, if that can be replaced with dental assisting graduates. That's all.
I'd like to make a motion for corrections. Okay, and approval with corrections.
Motion to approve meeting minutes with corrections. Pacheco.
Thank you.
Fowler, second.
Thank you. Is there any public comments in regards to this motion? I see no public comments. Thank you, board staff. Please call the roll for recording the vote for this agenda item.
This is Marella Teran. The motion is to approve the February 9, 2023 meeting minutes as revised. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, approve.
Fowler,
Fowler, approve.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, approve.
Olagi, absent. Pacheco,
Pacheco, approve.
Bliss, absent. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza, approve.
The motion passed.
Thank you. I will now move on to agenda item number 4, Executive Office Report. I'm going to ask Tracy, the Executive Officer, to present the agenda item.
Good morning, everyone. Tracy Montez, Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. Before I give my report, I would like to note that we have our Orange County field office representatives in the back of the room. So if there are any safety issues or concerns, they will be available to assist us with exiting out of the hotel. And thank you. And we will actually introduce them individually at the board meeting a little later this morning. So welcome. With that, for my executive officer report, it's going to be brief this morning. I'll add a little bit more later this morning when we meet in full board. But I did want to share with everyone that I do continue to have calls with our chair and co-chair, vice chair, on the upcoming Dental Assisting Council meetings to go over various agenda items and to make sure that they are ready and prepared and have any questions answered before our meetings. Also, board staff are now conducting continuing education audits. They're going very well. We're using this as an opportunity to remind our dental assisting professionals the importance of meeting the obligations of maintaining their license in good standing. So this has been a very successful process. Also, board leadership is reorganizing the structure of the units and divisions within the board with one goal to dedicate more staff resources to the dental assisting profession. And I'll talk a little bit more about this with some of our items coming up. And then finally, we had the opportunity, board staff presented at the California Dental Alliance and KDAT conference that was April 21st, and my understanding is that went very well. They gave a brief presentation on dental assisting and were available for some questions. And again, Ms. Parks was actually there and very happy to be able to send her to the conference. And so with that, I will conclude my EO update. Again, we'll have a little bit more information shared later in the full board meeting. Thank you.
Is there any council member discussion? Could I ask how many audits you guys are doing in a quarter now for education for dental assistants and EFs?
I don't have the specific number, but it's about 1% of the population. Ricky might have the actual number, but it is a random sample of dental assisting professions as well as our dentist. And Ricky, who's coming up for the next item, may have the actual number.
Good morning, Ricky Parks here. The total number across the entire board for all license types is 30. 15 are RDA dental auxiliary license types, so that could be The orthodontic assistant, DSA, EF, or RDA.
Is that 30 total in a year, Ricky?
Per month.
Per month?
Sorry, yes,
Okay,
per month.
all right.
And those are the licensees that renewed on an active status.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Thank you. I will now move on to agenda item number 5, update on dental assisting exams statistics. I'm going to ask Ricky to go ahead and go forward with your agenda.
Thank you and good morning, Chair Reed Espinoza and members of the council. My name again is Ricky Parks, Dental Assisting Manager. And we currently have 4 written examinations, the RDA General and Law and Ethics written exam, the RDA EF written exam, the Orthodontic Assistant Permit written exam, and the Dental Sedation Assistant Permit written exam. The table that begins on page 20 of your meeting materials include candidates that attempted dental assisting examinations this fiscal year and the past 3 fiscal years. And since I was asked at the last meeting how many questions are on the RDA General and Law and Ethics exam, I wanted to clarify that the RDA exam is comprised of 125 scoreable items, 25 pre-test items for a total of 150 items. That concludes this agenda item, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is there any council member discussion in regards to this item? Is there any public comments? Thank you. I will now move on to agenda item number 6, update on dental assistant licensing statistics. Again, Ms. Parks, can you present this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rita Espinoza. Ricky Parks, Dental Assisting Manager. The information covered in this agenda item reflects the current fiscal year through March 31st, 2023, and the past 3 fiscal years in their entirety. Beginning on page 22 of your meeting materials, you can find the statistics on license applications received and approved to test. On page 23, you will find statistics on licenses issued and applications canceled. On page 24, you will find statistics on applications withdrawn and applicants who were denied licensure. Moving on to page 29, you will find statistics on active, inactive, delinquent, and canceled licenses or permits. And on page 30 and 31 is where the RDA and DDS comparisons are reported. And that concludes agenda item 6. And there is no action requested on this item, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any council member discussion? I see no council member discussion. Is there any public comments in regards to this agenda item? I see no public comments. Thank you. I would like to move on to agenda item number 7, update on registered dental assistants and registered dental assistant expanded function education programs and courses, applications, approval of sites. I'm going again to ask Mrs. Parks to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Rita Espinoza. Ricky Parks here, Dental Assisting Manager. During the August 2022 Dental Assisting Council meeting, the council approved a 2-member working group who were tasked to research the dental auxiliary examination, certification, portability issues, research, education requirements in other states, and review the applicable statutes and regulations regarding board approval of registered dental assistant and registered dental assistant in extended functions, educational programs and courses for potential amendments. The two-member working group sent a survey to the other U.S. states and territory that would clarify if other states require certification or licensure for dental assistants and if educational components are required and how those components are approved. At the February 2023 Dental Assistant Council meeting, the survey results were provided as well as the findings of board staff research. Council discussed the information provided and expressed their observations and concluded that changes to the regulations would be necessary. Also during the February 2023 Dental Assistant Council meeting, Council asked how many board-approved programs or courses providers had pending applications for multiple locations with the board. And we have a total of 2 course providers who are applying for board approval for multiple locations. Currently, board staff are working to streamline internal processes, developing an outreach strategy that will assist with having current information on programs and courses, and we are preparing to conduct site visits. Board staff are also evaluating the impact that AB 481 will have and can coordinate with the 2-member working group, then bring its findings to the council in August. Starting on page 35 of your meeting materials, you will find an update on the number of programs and courses that have been received and approved by the board in the year 2022 and for the first quarter of 2023. This item also provides a listing of programs and courses that were approved by the board in 2022 and 23. Please note that there is a complete list posted on the Dental Board's website found under the Educators tab. That concludes this agenda item, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Tracy. Tracy Montez, I would just like to thank Ms. Parks and her team for putting together this item. It was my understanding this had been a previous standing item that had dropped off, so we wanted to add it again to provide information, again, be transparent, keep you updated. Her team has been doing a fabulous job with pulling these education program approvals that have been shelved, primarily due to COVID and again vacancies, and moving them forward. And it's just really been an exciting process. We have some time dedicated next week to be looking at the education programs. We have a strategy to address deficiencies more quickly, and so we're hoping in the next maybe 9 months or so to really streamline things.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Ms. Parks, if a education program is in one county, do they fully need to do another application if they're going to go into another county and put that together, or is it just targeted off their original licensing for their education system? that they have?
Historically, they would need to submit another application if they wanted to operate out of another site. So they would have to apply again.
Do they get any advantage because they're already in the system for opening another site, or it's the complete process?
It would be the complete process. Mhm.
And I wouldn't use the word advantage, but I would say that because they already have a program in place, I would reasonably assume the approval process would be more efficient because it has already been approved. It's just going to a different county, and they're less likely of any deficiencies.
Right.
Thank you.
Miyazaki, would it be possible for the ones that have a program or course that's already approved, well, actually a course that's already approved, have like a more streamlined method of just submitting the alternative site, or is that something that's not recommended?
It'd likely require some changes, and I think that just the process itself would still be streamlined because they have already been approved, so. It's the same staff person that's reviewing the programs and courses.
Could we discuss or have a discussion about the subject matter experts, and would it be possible to make recommendations such as if a subject matter expert, if we divide California up into like Northern California, Southern California, and Central California, that if someone has a program or course in Southern California, that they're evaluated by a subject matter expert that comes from a different area of California, such as Central or Northern California. It's something that's similar to what's done with CODA, and CODA site visitors cannot evaluate a program in their same state. They have to evaluate programs outside of their state. Is that something that we could add as a recommendation?
This is Tara Welch, legal counsel. I would probably set that for a future agenda item, because that's pretty specific, while this current agenda item is pretty general with respect to site evaluation and programs, and there's no request for the council to do anything, take any action on this item. So this, I think, would be better as a future agenda item that highlights the issue itself, and then with a recommendation to take some form of action.
Could we discuss some criteria to be advanced in a future agenda item, or just completely stay off the topic?
Yeah, the council could give staff some direction as to what the agenda item would look like, either now or under the other agenda item for future agenda items. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really, it'll be a more effective discussion if the council lets staff know exactly what the discussion you guys want to have, and that way, or also you could delegate that to a two-member working group to compile information for a thorough discussion at a future meeting. I mean, I know that it's really difficult for board staff to compile a bunch of information other than statistics, which they're the ones who have access to that. But if we're talking about researching what other accrediting bodies do, it would be better for council, a two-member working group, to prepare that information for meeting materials.
So with that, I would like to suggest to the chair to create a two-member working group to come up with this list to be provided to board staff so that we can bring an agenda item with this information in it. We know that we want to address conflict of interest as one of the comments that came up, and any other criteria for these individuals and conducting site visits. Is that what your focus is on? Okay, so it would be for site visits, conflict of interest. We'd like a two-member working group to potentially come up with additional criteria for these individuals. That would be my suggestion based on direction from legal counsel. Thank you.
Does that need a motion?
I would say no, that the chair can designate the two members who are willing to perform this research, because otherwise there's no contemplated council action on the agenda.
May I have two volunteers in regards to this site visitation agenda?
Pacheco volunteers.
Miyazaki volunteer.
Yeah. Okay. So we have Pachenko and Miyazaki as our volunteers in regards to educating us. Next council meeting on this agenda item. Is there any public comments? I see no, oh, yes, there is.
Dr. Bruce Witcher, representing myself. Just to back up a little bit, this agenda item, you asked the question about, is there any standardization that might be applied to programs given in multiple locations? And I'd like to speak to that item rather than the one that just came up. As you know, I've been involved with the DSA program for some years, and the association does have a model curriculum that they share with their members, which really facilitates the application process. That was reviewed and approved by the board. The site-specific information for each course location does need to be updated for each site. However, they can use that curriculum, which is 350 pages long, and it's designed to conform to the educational regulations. So for each program to have to develop that would be extremely burdensome. I believe that reading some of the materials, there was a reference to the fact that the courses often share material more than the educational programs themselves. So maybe there's a lesson you can take from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Thank you, Ms. Parks. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 8, discussion of possible recommendations on legislation proposals amendment business professional code PPC, section 1601.1 and 1740. A repealed BC section 1742 regarding dental assistant counsel.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Council. This is David Bruggeman. I'm the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist with the Board, and I'm going to be discussing the legislative proposal that's been drafted and that you can find on page 43 of your meeting materials. I'll simply note that any language that is being proposed to be removed from statute is in strike-through and red text. Any text that is being proposed to be added to statute is in blue text and italics. And as was noted, we're discussing, we would be seeking a recommendation from the council, if they so choose, on this legislative proposal for the board to consider. And if the board does agree to advance this proposal, this would become part of our sunset review process, which would begin later this year. The specifics of this proposal relate to the status and structure of the Dental Assistant Council, which is specified in Section 1742 of the Business and Professions Code. And it specifies the membership of the code, designates the council as a unit of the board, and goes into certain specifications about the qualifications of some of the members of the board. It does not set the frequency and location of council meetings, but typically the practice has been to hold council meetings just prior to or otherwise in conjunction with board meetings, and that level of interaction and feedback between the board and the council has been a subject of some discussion over the past several years. And this proposal, which would shift the structure of the council from a statutorily prescribed council to a specific needs committee, or allowing it to be a specific needs committee, staff believes that this would be a more efficient and effective strategy to address dental assisting issues. And the basic change here would be to shift the council from its current structure to allow the council to be effectively a standing committee of the board. It is not specified in statute, but the board would be able to designate a committee as it currently has the authority to do so under Business Professions Code Section 1601.1. And so these standing committees have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how they can operate and function. If they are two-member committees, they do not have to comply, they are not subject to the Bagley-Keene open meeting laws and associated regulations, which means that those meetings do not need to be publicly noticed and scheduled in such a way to allow for a bit more flexibility in terms of responsiveness to immediate needs and availability of members. And additionally, the board has a history of appointing these committees. We currently have several set up, as was outlined at a previous meeting. An anesthesia committee and a legislative and regulatory committee. Those are some of the committees that we've used in the past. And the idea would be that the dental assisting council would essentially be one of this kind of committees, and that it would be able to interact more integrally with the board and to be able to communicate their issues and concerns in a way that does not require as much separation or advance notice as is currently the requirements under statute. And we believe this flexibility should address some of these concerns about the interactions and communications of dental assisting issues with the board. At this point, I'd like to defer to Dr. Montez, Executive Officer, to add any additional material that she may wish to at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Bruggeman. So I just, as we go into this item, and again, it's going to be discussed at the board meeting, I just want our council and our stakeholders to understand that this was a very thoughtful process in forward bringing this item to the council and to the board. I have had a long working relationship with the dental board in addition to my time as EO, and I feel that this is something that has been discussed with prior leadership of the board but has never been brought forward. And so in working with my team, we decided that this was the time to bring it forward. We feel that with the changes we're making to the reorganization that I alluded to, that we can move more efficiently through dental assisting needs and issues, and to be able to bring this to the board and have a healthy discussion rather than the process that is in place right now. And I'll respond a little bit more, I'm sure, because I anticipate lots of discussion on this item. But again, I want everybody to know that this was a very thoughtful agenda item that was added today to both of the meetings. Thank you.
I would simply like to add that in conjunction with the changes to statute that we need to make in order to allow the Dental Assistant Council to function as a standalone committee, we are recommending that the amend Section 1601.1 of the Business and Professions Code to change the membership of the dental board. And this would be to increase the number of dental assistants, specifically of registered dental assistant members from 1 to 2, and decreasing the number of dentist members from 8 to 7. So at this point, I have some suggested motion language should the council wish to make a recommendation. That is on page 42. Of course, the council may opt not to make a recommendation. If that is their interest, then there is no motion necessary. But if they wish to make a recommendation one way or another, the suggested motion language is on page 42. Thank you.
Is there any council member discussion in regards to this agenda item?
I can understand the advantage of the proposal to increase the efficiency and the flexibility, having a two-person committee. But I feel in my heart that those two people will not be able to represent all the stakeholders, the RDAs, the EFs, the OAPs, the dental station permits, CODA-approved programs, RDA-approved programs, ROPs, adult ed, and all the educators as well for those programs. And we also are adding a new dental assisting apprenticeship pathways as well, and the preceptor pathway, which may be added as part of the bill too as well. And I don't think that the two people could represent fully all of
the dental assistants in California. And when I look at the board meeting materials, there's about 32,000 active dental assistants, there's about 35,000 active dental licenses, and the board representation is not equivalent to the representation of the ratio of dental assistants to dentists, and there's actually more public members than there are dental assistants, which I can understand for the safety of the public. With all due respect to the public members, we do need to have their input and their representation on the board. And I'd like to hear from the other council members too before I add anything else.
I would like to suggest possibly in regards to the registered dental, you're stating to move up to 2 registered dental assistants, a little bit more structured and detailed language that possibly doing 1 registered dental assistant, 1 registered dental assistant EF2, and 1 educating entity in regards to adding to the board. If we're going to disband this type of board situation, I think at least we should have a representation of dental assistants, EF2s, and education in the dental assistant. Ms. Fowler?
So I agree with Tracy Reed Espinoza on, I'm just clarifying. So you're proposing that for the actual dental board, having, instead of just 1 RDA position, opening up for 3 possibly?
Yes.
Right, so an educator, RDA, and the third was an EF2. That's good. We'll have to see how that pans out here. Another thing, I also agree with Kara Miyazaki, in that if we, for the dental assisting committee, that per those 2 people, that's a lot of information they would have to be able to speak on and weigh in on. And so that selection process for that 2-person committee would have to be someone who's very robust in a lot of areas in order to really represent the community well and the profession well. And so I am concerned on that, and it would be interesting to find out how that selection process for those, if you are going to go down to 2, would occur, and these people would have to be very qualified to be able to really represent the dental assistant, because it is so vast, like you say. So, and I imagine that staff support and all that will be explained on that 2-person committee, how that works out.
May I clarify that the members of the board, of course, would be appointed by the governor, and then the standing committee would consist of board members. And so the RDAs on the board would be the standing committee, assuming the board would appoint them. That would make the logical sense. And so I just want to clarify that. So it's the governor or the legislature that appoints the board members, then the board develops the standing committee. The standing committee then would be able to work with the stakeholder groups to ensure that all of those areas are represented. Thank you.
Epps Robbins. I do agree definitely with Tracy Reed Espinoza that it is a definite need to have an EF, an educator, and an additional RDA. I think with that being said, the EF would bring in some of their points and viewpoints, which obviously with this paragraph that's missing some of that information by only with the addition of just 2 registered dental assistants. I think it should be split between the 2 to give them 2 different types of differences, and also to be able to see the different viewpoints. As far as the educator, I do believe that that is also needed, because then that helps to support that area of education-based information that may come through as an educator to be able to see or to input something that would help to kind of balance out this whole committee. So I do agree with that, and also definitely with Kara Miyazaki that 2 RDAs would definitely, that's a lot of information to disperse amongst the 2. Although a governor appointed, that still would need to have a very well strategic thought process for that position that's held by those 2 RDAs. They would have to kind of be much likely be committed fully to be able to decipher all of this information that was going to roll through. Thank you.
May I ask a question of the council? So, as it's written, the suggestion is to take one of the, vacant dental positions or a dentist position and to change it to an RDA. But I'm hearing a 3rd RDA, which I would anticipate is a big ask. So I would ask the council, currently we have an RDH position, and I assume that this goes back to before we had a dental hygiene board. So would you then suggest that when that individual terms out, that becomes your 3rd RDA position? Or are you looking for 3 RDAs, 1 RDH? Because then that would mean you'd lose 2 dentist positions if you wanted your 3 RDAs.
So my understanding at this time, are all board positions full for the dental board?
No, we have vacancies in our dentist positions, but you can't just swap them out. It has to be a statutory change.
Okay, so then I would be requesting that when the RDH terms, that would be taken over by a dental assistant educator position.
Is that the other council members? Is that what they would support?
Would the other council members present here support that?
Epps Robbins, I would support it, as long as there isn't any concern from the RDH positions. If the RDHs feel that they should still have some type of access to this board or some type of input, if no one, I guess, pretty much applies for that position, or if it terms out and there's no need to refill it, then I definitely would support that, to have the 3 RDAs.
Pacheco, just to comment, I think in this era of inclusivity, having a dental hygienist on the dental board, there is a dentist on the dental hygiene board. It provides collegiality between the 2 professional boards.
Miyazaki? Oh, sorry. So I believe that the RDH position was created before the creation of the DHBC, and now that the DHBC, the Dental Hygiene Board of California, is created, they have a voice as a stakeholder, and so I think we have a era of collegiality, and we have input from the Dental Hygiene Board too as well.
I agree with Ms. Pacheco and Ms. Miyazaki that we do need to maintain that RDH position, but I do question why it is heavy DDS, and so why we couldn't take away possibly another position of the DDS. Hygiene needs to be represented, RDAs and EFs need to be represented. Of course, DDS need to be represented. But I would like to make it a little more even and have what we're trying to propose as well, and keep everybody else in there. But maybe take out a couple more, or 1 more DDS.
So I think I misspoke, but I actually am in support of Tracy Montez's proposal of replacing, when the RDH terms out, to replace with an RDA we appoint 1 other. I would preferably have 4 RDAs or dental assistants on the board, but if it comes down to adding 1, and when the RDH terms out, to replace with another assistant, preferably an educator or an RDA, and an RDA EF2. And I also want to make another comment. I have been participating in workshops when there was like a subcommittee, and I understand that subcommittees can arise from the committee of subject matter experts and stakeholders. I've been in workshops for that, and when it came down to the reporting to the dental board, I thought what we had agreed on, in my opinion, was not what was reported to the dental board. So I understand that that's a process that can work out, but that's why I just feel so strongly about having more dental assistants other than just two on the board.
And I'd like to just clarify, it wasn't a recommendation, it was just a question, because I want to clarify and be real clear what the council is asking. And I think that if the council wants to recommend 3, total RDAs and an RDH to the board, that's fine. The board, again, will listen and consider and move forward. So, your ask can be whatever you would like it to be in terms of the majority, and present your rationale. And again, they will take that under consideration, as well as public comment that will come. So again, you're the experts, and you know what's needed. And again, I want to be clear, and I will say this over and over, is that it is my goal to make sure that everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but our professions are represented in terms of their voices to the best that I can. So in having conversations with our chair and vice chair, I've encouraged them again to give lots of feedback and criteria and have this kind of discussion, because it's important.
Would it be possible to get feedback from the public comments and then return back to discussion for the Dental Assisting Council?
Do we have any public comments in regards to this agenda item?
Good morning. Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. That's the California Dental Assistants Association, the California Association of Dental Assisting Teachers, and the California Association of Extended Functions. As stated with the board's proposed language, and I'm quoting, the current council structure for the DAC requires board staff to schedule council meetings, coordinate council member travel, prepare council meeting agendas, and associated meeting materials, all separate from the quarterly board meetings. These actions are burdensome and costly. And so this is actually the board's charge to coordinate these meetings. If cost is a main issue, then raise the fees. The fees haven't been raised since 2016, and the fees need to be appropriate to support the representation of the board for those people. The Dental Assisting Council was formed to replace COMDA and to have representation for all dental assistants. And as I've heard conversation go by, we've talked about all the licentiants, but what about all the numbers of the unlicensed category, which also the DAC is responsible for representing as well. So, and this of course includes the unlicensed dental assistants, the RDAs, the EFs, the OAs, the DSAs, and the educators. In regards to efficiency, the
30 seconds.
The proposed RDAs on the board, thank you, would not adequately represent all areas of dental assisting and not possibly fulfill all the duties of the 7 DAC representatives. An appointed 2-person committee representing dental assistant potentially introduces lack of transparency, especially with no public notice required, effective communication lacking, and lack of expertise and breadth of experience, and the Alliance strongly opposes this change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Anthony Lum, Executive Officer of the Dental Hygiene Board. I'm speaking on behalf of myself because my board has not discussed this issue. However, I just wanted to let you know that having an RDH member on this board, because the dental team works together in actual practice out there, that's very important that the issues that are brought up from this board be addressed and have an input say from an RDH representative. We have a dentist representative on our board, and the input that he or she has put into our board over the years has been priceless. And to have it, the dental hygienist excluded, I think you're missing out on a very valuable piece of information there, and also being able to give the dental hygiene perspective on issues that may arise before this board, or this council. So that's my 2 cents, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Dr. Bruce Witcher, speaking on behalf of CDA. I'll try to be brief, but just to give you a background, I served as dental board liaison to the Dental Assisting Council during my tenure on the board, so I date back to the very beginning. I think the legislature did a very nice job in their selection of appointment to the DAC qualifications, in that it represents a broad base of dental assisting, which is an incredibly diverse profession, as Mrs. Becker indicated. You have practicing RDAs that now hold positions, you have educators, and then you have EFs. So all three have a seat. Now, their job is not necessarily to represent the profession, it's actually to provide expertise. So you need expertise from all those quadrants, and I totally support that. And I think you're going to lose that. Vis-a-vis the dental board and replacing a dentist member, the dental board deals with very technical and complex issues such as SB 501 that reach across multiple specialties within dentistry. If you reduce that expertise by one board member, you're going to lose significant input from a dental board member. So I would speak in opposition to the proposal. As I say, I could go on about this quite a bit, but in interest of brevity, I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, do we have any comments?
So it's my understanding that we can actually oppose if we agree that the 2 or 3 additional members on the board and the dissolving of the DAC would not represent the Dental Assistants of California. We could oppose this recommendation. So I just wanted to find out we could oppose it, but then like if it actually, we know it's on the board agenda for later on today and the board is going to make a decision about it. So I think they've heard the arguments sort of for and against, and also the need for a dental hygienist or not a dental hygienist. I do have a question. Is there a dental assistant on the DHBC? Does anyone?
No. No, there is not.
Fowler here. Can we, I would like to see part of this go through where an RDA is, so we have 2 RDAs that would be represented on the dental board, but oppose the dismemberment of our existing dental assisting council. Can we make modifications in that regard? Where we approve one?
I think so, yes. Council says it is fine. So yes, you can make recommendations to the board based upon the feedback and modify the motions as you wish. And again, it would be a recommendation to the board.
Okay. My fellow dental assisting council members, how do you feel about that? Do we have any discussion? Any feedback?
Epps Robbins, I believe so, we should. Oh, it's not a motion, yeah, so.
So clarification is to oppose the dissolution of the Dental Assisting Council, but to recommend adding another dental assistant on the dental board. And would the Dental Assisting Council become a subcommittee, or they would remain as a Dental Assisting Council?
They would remain as a council.
Then I support that.
Now, what that second RDA position is, that is something we could discuss. It may not be 2 exact RDAs. Maybe you could put an educator in there, or possibly an EF, so you have an RDA and an EF. That is something we could discuss.
My suggestion would be either we're taking away a dentist or taking away a public member off of the board, making it a 3 position for the assistants, one being an RDA, one being an EF, and one being an educator. We have an RDA on the board as of now, so that would just be adding 2 positions, with leaving the hygiene position as well at this time, not dissolving the council.
I would like to add that I feel that the legislature would have concerns if you remove public members. We want to avoid any antitrust issues, concerns, and I think you should be sensitive to the comments that were made, or Dr. Witcher made regarding dentists. So think about the number that you would be suggesting.
So the number is 3 or 2 for the dental board? Ms. Fowler?
Fowler here. I recommend having 2 RDA or dental assisting positions on the dental board. We have one there now, so we're going to add another, and we would have to remove one of the dentist positions to do that. We need to determine that second position that we're adding. Do we want it to be an educator? Do we want it to be RDA EF? Do we want it to be an RDA that has OA, blah, 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 blah? How do you want to determine that?
So at this juncture, if we're only planning on adding a position, then the RDA position that is there now, I would prefer it to be an RDA EF, since they've gone through the structure of RDA, and now they have the EF component as well, and then an educator. That would be my proposal.
Fowler here. I don't know about term expirations. The RDA position that we have there now, so you're saying when they expire, then that position can be filled with an RDA EF, and then the new position, an educator, an RDA educator, correct?
Reed Espinoza, yes.
Could we go further that the RDA educator is teaching in a accredited program or a program or school that's accredited? And do we want to ask for so many years of experience? For
Yeah.
example, 10.
Yeah, I would ask for a minimum education of 4 years, and yes, accredited at this time.
4 years of instruction or 4 years of clinical experience?
Instruction, since they're going to be doing the component of education.
Do we want to specify a bachelor's, a certain type of degree, like a bachelor's degree?
Fowler here. I believe for the educator, when you say you're talking CODA accredited school?
No, not exactly, because you could have a K through 12 and they're accredited by
Okay.
other accreditation agencies across the United States or in California.
Okay. I agree with the experience, and go ahead.
Sorry, I have something that our legal counsel has helped with. It's going to make my life a little more challenging, but it will make your discussion a lot easier. We could recommend to adding 2 positions to the board. So keep the number of dentists at 8 and add 2 more RDAs. So you'd have your RDA EF, your RDA educator, and your RDA, and your RDH.
Great.
And that's in addition to keeping the dental assistant council.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. And while I have the mic, I just want to be very clear that, yes, it is our charge to do agendas and publicize and get board and meeting materials together and arrange travel. It is very time-consuming. In fact, next week, we will be debriefing and outlining what's going to happen in the August board meeting. We will also be preparing for Sunset and all the other multitude of projects that include licensing, enforcement, and complaints. And we will be strategizing how to address the backlog in regulations and all the other things that are happening. So you're going to need to understand that there's going to be a lot of patience, because raising fees, while sounds very nice, and getting positions is also not easy to do. The entire state is having trouble hiring. I've been here almost a year, and we are still trying to fill all of our positions, and that is not because we're not dealing with it on a daily basis. So while money is great, it takes people to do the work. So I will just simply ask for you to be patient as we move forward, because there is a lot of work to be done. We're all very excited about it, but my staff can only work so much, and so I'm excited about this discussion, because this is what needs to happen in the DAC meetings, these kind of discussions. So thank you.
I just want to make sure, I know I mentioned this before, but I just want to emphasize that the Dental Assisting Council, we're representing so many different types of assistants in California. It's not like a state where they have maybe an unlicensed dental assistant status. We're representing the RDAs, the RDAFs, the ortho assistant permits, dental sedation permits, CODA approved programs, RDA approved programs, ROP, adult ed, educators of all those programs, and also the new apprenticeship pathways too as well. So I think that's an argument for keeping the DAC and proposing the two assisting positions on the dental board, one being an RDAEF 2 and one being an educator with also specifying specific requirements for each position.
Okay, so what I'm going to recommend is you make your motion about the content, and then I'll follow up with your proposed changes to the actual code sections. So we're clear on what your intent is and what you're proposing to the board with respect to the legislative proposal before you.
Miyazaki, I make a motion to oppose the recommended proposed legislative amendments.
Okay, I think you want to reject the amendments to Business and Professions Code Section 1740, which is proposed to strike the sentence that requires the dental board to give specific consideration to the recommendations of the Dental Assisting Council, and you're rejecting the repeal of Business and Professions Code Section 1742.
Can you repeat that?
You're rejecting amendments, the proposed amendments to Business and Professions Code Section 1740, and rejecting the proposed repeal of Business and Professions Code Section 1742. That's part of your motion.
Okay, great. And then do we vote on that motion first, and then we go ahead and go with the motion about the two dental board?
You can split it up, or you can do it all in one.
All one. Okay, so I make a motion to reject the proposal for the amendments to the Business and Professions Code 1740, and reject the proposal to repeal the proposed Business and Profession Section 1742.
So I think that you would like to propose revisions to the proposed amendments to Business and Professions Code Section 1601.1 Subdivision A. And you're going to have to help me. Right now, it says that it would reduce the number of practicing dentists on the board from 8 to 7. I think that you would recommend that that not be amended, so that it would remain as 8 dentists, and then maintain the existing 1 registered dental hygienist. The proposal currently recommends adding one new registered dental assistant on the board for a total of 2. I think that you're going to be recommending a revision to increase that, the existing 1 by 2, so it would be 3 RDAs
And I can
in
say,
that sentence, 5 public members, and then likely add a sentence that would clarify who are the RDAs. So in the second sentence of that section, it clarifies of the 8 practicing dentists, 1 shall be a member of a faculty, et cetera. We would want to do the same thing for, of the 3 RDAs, 1 shall be a licensee with 5 years' experience, or, you know, this is, you kind of craft it how you want it. 1 shall be an educator, 1 shall be an RDA EF2 with 5 years of experience, something like that.
With that, I would like to state, rather than 8, it be 7 practicing dentists, as it is in there right now.
That would mean that we would have an even number of board members at 16, which would be difficult for votes.
Gotcha.
So if you want to add 2, we likely will just maintain the existing number of dentists.
Thank you.
So let's clarify for the record, your RDA is licensed with 5 years experience. You want an RDA EF, 5. Thank you. So let's clarify, RDA, 5 years experience, RDA EF, 5 years experience, RDA educator, 5 years experience from a accredited program, is that what I'm hearing?
or school.
Accredited program or school, and is that the criteria that you would like to have in your motion and recommended to the board?
Is it
So I'm
possible-
wondering if I may, in the second sentence of this section, it lays out that the dentist, one of the dentist members has to be a member of a faculty of any California dental college. I think the description of the RDA educator should be similar, so that it's the 1 RDA shall be a member of faculty at an accredited RDA education program. Okay.
That does limit, because there's, that would be too limited to CODA approved programs, or if it could we craft the language so a K through 12, it has accreditation. So we have an educator from just not an ROP program, a CODA approved program, but an accredited.
You mean
So-
accredited or board-approved RDA program, education program?
Could we put accredited program or school?
Well, we need some kind of official status of the program this educator is coming from. So either they need to be CODA accredited or board approved, right?
So I guess what I'm getting at is, let's say I become an RDA, I decide to open an RDA school, I don't have any students, I could apply for the position, so, or it's,
Well, you would first have to get board approval of your program.
yeah, and then if I don't, see, because programs like K through 12 or CODA crew programs have requirements for outcomes, there has to be like certain types of outcomes, graduation rates and things like that, versus like a other types of RDA programs? Or would that be vetted out in the criteria for the application?
Right now, we're just trying to figure out what credentials do you want this RDA educator to have? And the credentials are all about their position as an educator. So what type of program do you want them to come from and represent all educators?
But saying accredited is not enough, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that there should be some level of status for the educational program, that it can't just be some educator, they have to be a member of faculty from an approved program. Somebody has reviewed the program and ensured that it meets the specific requirements for teaching students. We want to make sure that they are complying with California laws, right?
So what about a faculty of any board-approved dental program or school?
I think what you can do is, nail down effectively what you want substantively, and then we can massage it by looking at the other statutes regarding board approval of educational programs and match the language. It's just difficult to do on the spot.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like dental hygiene and dental schools are all CODA-approved programs, but not all RDA programs are CODA-approved programs. And so when they're CODA-approved or they're accredited by another body, that they have to have outcomes that are reported to like a state or some sort of institution versus a program that doesn't have to have any outcomes reporting. So that's what I'm trying to drill it down to.
Right, and you can do either accredited or board approved, because the board still is involved with approving applications to offer RDA educational courses and programs.
Well, I think if we're going for highest standards for our community in the dental, we should go with the highest standards in regards to being certified faculty-wise. And that's what we would want to represent us.
So CODA-approved. All right. Are the other council members in agreement?
I believe it should be, the educator position should be RDA that is a faculty member of a board-approved program. And then you could put in with a minimum of 5 years' experience or 10 years' experience. And if you even want to be more specific, of one or more programs, RDA programs, it could be RDA, it could be RDAF, or if you want them to be that faculty experience to be more than just one area. But I like the board-approved and faculty member of a board-approved program, because then it doesn't eliminate all those programs out there and those faculty members that have some input but that aren't CODA approved.
I agree, Pacheco, I agree with Ms. Fowler. I would caution on being too specific for these positions.
Ms. Pacheco, I agree with you. We probably shouldn't get too specific, but definitely say faculty member board-approved program.
All right, I think I'm ready to make my motion. Make a motion to propose a revision to section 16.1, subdivision A, to reduce the number of practicing dentists from 8 to 7?
No,
No.
we're leaving that
to-
as is. We're just
Okay.
rejecting that proposed amendment, so it would just maintain the existing 8 dentists.
Okay, I make a proposal to maintain the existing 8 dentists on the dental board. Maintain the existing RDH on the dental board. Add 1 new dental assistant to the board for a total of 2, 3?
Right, so you'll propose to add 2 RDAs,
2 dental, add
or
2
RDA positions,
RDA positions
for a total of 3.
for a total of 3. Keep the 5 public members.
Correct.
And the other 3 on the board have 1 that is licensed with with professional experience of 5 years or more. And a an RDA or RDAEF educator from a from a board-approved program. And then the third is a practicing RDAEF2 with 5 years of experience.
May I just add on the educator to have a 5 years experience minimum?
Would anyone be opposed to requiring a bachelor's degree?
I would be opposed to that. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a little bit over
All right,
the requirement.
I agree.
I'll go ahead and second the motion.
Okay, and just to be clear, the current motion includes the prior statements about rejecting the amendment to Business and Professions Code 1740 and rejecting the repeal of Business and Professions Code Section 1742.
Correct. All right, let's go to committee comments in regards to this motion.
We've already gotten a second on it. I think we're good, right? We just need to restate it and vote.
No.
Public
yeah,
comment.
Public comment.
Can I?
No, I'll go ahead and ask for, oh, excuse me, hold on just a moment.
I just want to say I think this is a win-win for this proposal, and I'm just really proud of the work that we've been doing.
Let me go to public comments.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Lori Gallardi, representing the Foundation for Allied Dental Education. We're a nonprofit organization that advocates for high standards in dental assisting education, quality assurance, and patient safety, also known as FADE. We concur with all the previous speakers in the council's discussion. We're thrilled that you're supporting the retention of DAC. It was, very difficult when we lost COMDA, and so we would like to thank you and say we do appreciate the discussion, in addition to the discussion for adding additional members for more parity on the dental board. So thank you again, and we look forward to continuing on with DAC and the requirements and responsibilities that you all have to do. Thank you.
Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. Agree with everything Ms. Gallardi just said and appreciate the addition of 2 additions to the dental board and also the retention of the Dental Assisting Council. Thank you.
All right, if there's no more public comments, we'll go ahead and vote. Can you please call the roll?
This is Morella Teran. I will now call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, aye.
Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Olagi, absent. Pacheco,
Pacheco, aye.
Bliss, absent. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza, aye.
The motion passed.
All right, we've been asked to do a 10-minute break at this time. If everybody can convene back in 10 minutes, please. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to move on to agenda item number 9, update discussion and possible recommendations for pending legislation. Go ahead, David.
Hi, this is David Bruggerman again. I'm the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist for the board. We're bringing forward to the Dental Assisting Council for their consideration a recommendation on Assembly Bill 481. It is currently before the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It is scheduled for a hearing later today, and we will update everybody the results of that hearing once they're available. The bill was introduced in February of this year, significantly amended starting in March, with a legislative proposal written primarily by the California Dental Association to make significant changes to the dental assisting article within the Dental Practice Act. Some of those changes include adding definitions for several specific items into statute, and primarily changing the number of pathways to licensure to 5. The bill would add an hourly requirement to the current 15-month work experience pathway, meaning that unlicensed dental assistants would need to have had at least 1,280 hours of satisfactory work experience as certified by the employer dentist within those 15 months in order to qualify to sit for RDA licensure. Additional pathways include a preceptorship, which would combine work experience of at least 500 hours and coursework of at least 300 hours, including specified mandatory courses. And this employment would be supervised by an employer dentist designated as a preceptor who would evaluate competency, teach critical reasoning, ensure the coursework is from a board-approved provider, and document the progress of the preceptee. Additional pathways also include graduation from an alternative dental assisting program that would have at least 500 hours of coursework as defined in the legislation, plus an additional 300 hours of work experience verified by the employer dentist. And then the final new pathway would be to hold a current certified dental assistant certificate that is issued from the Dental Assisting National Board, DANB, and completing a course in Pitt and Fisher sealants. So the bill would also revise the obligations of the employer dentist of an unlicensed dental assistant. They would add the requirement that employer dentist would inform the unlicensed dental assistants about pathways to licensure and mandatory education requirements. Mandatory course requirements, what is currently in, I believe, Section 1750 of the Business Professions Code, would be amended to require the following courses in addition to basic life support certification. These would have to be from board-approved providers and would have to be done within 1 year of initial employment. These courses would be an 8-hour course in infection control. This specific course would have to be completed prior to any procedures being conducted where there could be exposure to infectious material, a 2-hour course in the Dental Practice Act, and a 2-hour course in the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health bloodborne pathogen training. The bill would make changes to the OA permit holder requirements. Those permit holders that had their permits issued on or after January 1 of 2026 would be allowed to perform additional duties, and OA permit holders who are RDA or RDAEF licensees could perform certain placements as specified in the legislation. The dental assistant permit requirements are changed as well, and those requirements would depend on whether the applicant is an unlicensed dental assistant or an RDA or RDAEF. Unlicensed applicants would need to take a longer course and would also need to comply with the mandatory education requirements for unlicensed dental assistants before sitting for the dental sedation permit exam. The bill also revises the list of various permitted duties for unlicensed dental assistants, RDA and RDAEF, and establishes criteria for courses in interim therapeutic restorations and radiographic decision-making, as well as infection control. The law would also put once again into statute requirements for licensees, permit holders, and radiation safety certificate holders to display those credentials in the treatment facility where the DA, the RDA, or RDF is performing the associated duties. As you can tell, this bill is going to make significant impacts of the Dental Practice Act specific to dental assistants. Board staff would need to put some significant work into revising current forms and processes to match the new terms of the legislation. There'll be some changes to the BREE system required. New regulations would need to be developed, and existing regulations would need to be revised in addition. And board staff have identified that the inclusion of the Certified Dental Assistant Certificate as a pathway could pose challenges based on the fact that the certificate is an annual renewal process as opposed to the biennial renewal process for RDA licensure, and those concerns would need to be addressed either through implementation regulations or in other ways. So at this point, the council has the option to provide a recommendation to the board on this specific bill. We've outlined the possibilities, outright support if amended, opposing the bill unless it was amended, a watch position, just that they may take action at a further time, taking a neutral position on a bill, or simply opting not to take a position on the bill in terms of recommending to the board what the board should do. At this point, I'd open it up to additional questions, well, any questions, pardon, and look forward to hearing from you and from the public.
Is there any council member discussion on agenda number 9?
So I have some specific comments about the things that are on the bill, and this is, the first one is 1741B, talks about apprenticeship dental assisting programs, and I was looking up whether they're recognized by the United States Department of Education, and I'm not sure if the California apprenticeship, because I think when we were talking about specific apprenticeship dental assisting programs, we're talking about dental assisting apprenticeship programs in California, because we're not, if we don't put California, then it would be like an apprenticeship from like Utah or Washington State, right? So
We want to clarify that the apprenticeships would need to be from within the state of California. Is that what I'm hearing?
approved by the Division of Apprenticeships of California Division of Apprenticeship Standards.
Okay.
And also to check whether, when they talk about, to include the part about the United States Department of Education, whether that's something that oversees the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards.
I can look into these questions and have a response for the council.
Great, thank you. Shall I continue? Okay, 1741E. Says certified dental assistants mean an individual who has successfully passed the national board exam in clinical chairside assisting administered by the DANBE, Dental Assisting National Board. The CDA exam actually is comprised of 3 exams that need to be passed: the general chairside exam, the infection control, and the radiation health and safety. So I believe that the national board examination in chairside assisting to add infection control and radiation health and safety for the CDA certification. Let's see, okay, 1741O. Preceptee means an unlicensed dental assistant who is employed by a California licensed dentist. Perhaps that should be considered. What happens if the preceptee is employed by the VA or a hospital or a clinic? Could it be maybe revised to employed by a California licensed dentist or employed in a dental facility? Could be added. (1748D), number 4. So it says graduation from alternative dental assisting programs, asks for factory evidence in both the following, and then number 4 is completion of a board-approved course in coronal polishing, which shall not be performed on a patient until licensure as a registered dental assistant is obtained. But I believe that the language was changed in another part of the document where the coronal polishing could be performed as soon as the certificate is awarded.
So there appears to be an internal conflict.
I believe so.
Thank you.
And 1755B. Sorry.
No, please take your time.
Okay. 1755B. They're discussing an unlicensed dental assistant taking the infection control class, and it's B number 2, 1755B number 2, board-approved 8-hour course with 6 hours of didactic instruction and no more than 2 hours of laboratory instruction using video or a series of video training tools. And I'm wondering if that could be more broad by saying, because someone may choose to do in person. So when we say using video or a series of video training tools, that it's like sort of like a must statement. So could that be changed to no more than 2 hours of elaborated instruction, which may use video or a series of video training tools?
I've made a note of that.
And then lastly, there's on the page 48 of my dental assisting council materials, there's a paragraph right before action requested that discusses the inclusion of the CDA certificate as a pathway for licensure, and whether how the renewal is different. The CDA renewal is annually, the RDA is biannually. Having experience with educators that have a CDA and a RDA, you can actually use the same CE.
So there is 100%
courses.
overlap, or
Well,
there's,
the CDA is only 10 units.
Okay.
And including CPR, and the RDA is 25 units. So I personally have used my 25 units as part of the 10 units when I renew for my CDA. And that's
Thank you.
required of all educators in coded approved programs, the CDA certification.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further? Go ahead, Ms. Vela.
I'd like to suggest some revisions as well. On Business Profession Code 1753.1, and that is section, it starts, section B, registered dental assistant, extended function, licensed after January 1st, 2010, may perform all the following duties under direct supervision pursuant to the order, control, and full professional responsibility of licensed dentist. Then it lists those duties. So I'm noticing that there were some major duties that were left off this list that were in the previous allowable duties for the RDA EF2 specifically. The duties that were left off the list that I would like to have added back on are size and fit endo master points and accessory points. Cement endo master points and accessory points. Polish and contour existing amalgam restorations. Place, contour, finish, adjust all direct restorations. And adjust and cement permanent indirect restorations. And then I had a question regarding one of the items that it's on item number 5 that's on AB 481. It says perform final impressions for removable prosthesis. In the past, we had delineated on that and said tooth-borne. By removing that, you definitely change the legislation of what they're allowed to do. If you want to remove that, I'm fine with that. But what I am recommending that you place those back in those duties I had listed, because otherwise you have it, with this legislation the way it's written, you have removed the EF2 licensure completely, and you have EF1s.
I just want to clarify as a general point that this is not legislation that the board staff has advanced. It's been written by others. We would absolutely present any suggestions for amendments. I'm just trying to make sure that the authorship is clear.
Right, I wanted to chime in on this. We've been working with CDA to amend the bill, and it's their bill. So if you have things that you want to add or concerns you want resolved, I think it's important to raise those issues here so that CDA and other stakeholders can respond, because it's not our bill. But also, I would recommend that you send all of your comments here to the chair so that she can incorporate that into her report to the board tomorrow, because we're out today. You're reading your report today. Because the board is then also taking a look at this legislation and raising their own concerns to document and provide feedback to the sponsor of the bill, the author of the bill, legislative staff. So, you know, I think all the points raised today are important, but we're not the keepers really of the information. We need you to properly document your concerns so that we can provide that feedback, that specific feedback in our communications back to the sponsor and author.
The bill is very specific, listing exactly what the duties were for the DA and the RDA and the OAP and even the DSA. And it's when it got to the RDA-EF section that all of a sudden what was allowable duties before, many of those were left off. And what it was all the EF2 duties. So that is huge, and if we're going to list all duties and be very specific when it comes to dental assisting and the different positions and licensures, we need to be consistent across the board so there is no misinterpretation and nothing gets changed that should not be changed. I do not want to eliminate the EF2 position from California.
Thank you.
So can we support if amended with your recommendations? Go ahead, Tara.
I've got some additional items of concern. Staff has raised an issue with 1748. Subdivision A, paragraph 4, term Roman numeral 2. This is the preceptorship credentialing, the completion of at least 300 hours of courses in dental assisting related topics. This one's a real concern for staff because they're going to have to process certificates reflecting 300 hours of courses, which in effect could actually be more like 600 certificates, because in CCR's Title 16, Section 1016, subsection G, the board allows CE credits to be issued in half-hour increments. So if board staff have to process 600 certificates for one applicant, that's going to take a lot of time, staff time, and that's going to cost to cover that staff time. So one issue is whether or not this particular pathway should have an increased license application fee because it's going to require so much staff time. In effect, right now, the RDA application fee is $120. That's under CCR Title 16, Section 1022. The cap for RDA fees is $200. So depending upon how much staff time this is going to take, there's going to be a cost associated with it. So Business and Professions Code Section 1725 may need to be amended to raise the RDA fee cap. And then Section 1022 of the board's regulations is going to have to be amended through the regulatory process to establish that application fee for that pathway. So the board would not be able to immediately issue RDA registrations for that pathway until a licensing fee was established, or an application fee was established for that pathway. Because, you know, the board can't just operate for free. So the fees is a bit of a big deal. Also, Section 1750.1, subdivision A, paragraph 1, would authorize an unlicensed dental assistant to perform digital scanning and imaging procedures using scanner technology used for orthodontic records only. I'm not really sure what that means, because if they're only scanning for record purposes, then that presumes that the scans, which is in effect digital intraoral imaging, could not then be used as a diagnostic tool to form a diagnosis by the dentist, create a written treatment plan, and then approve fabrication of a orthodontic appliance. So that's the first part of the sentence, but the second part of the sentence seems to contradict that, because then it would say, with final inspection and approval of the images by the dentist who treats the patient of record before fabricating. So that piece is very confusing. We're also concerned about the consumer protection of that authorized duty, because under existing law, an unlicensed dental assistant may only perform intraoral impressions under direct dentist supervision, and this bill would change that so that it's general supervision. We're not really sure why that is, because even with the digital intraoral imaging, the individual performing the scans has to go into the computer and ensure that every single image was properly captured, so that, because this is now going to be the images relied upon most likely to fabricate the orthodontic appliance. So this isn't just, you know, taking a picture. This is images that are going to be used for the actual treatment process. So we've got some concerns about changing that supervision requirement, but also what exactly the purpose of that provision is for. If it's only for record purposes, seems like, does that mean the consumer has to go back for a second visit and then get additional digital intraoral impressions so that they could then be used for diagnosis, written treatment plan, fabrication, and manufacture of the appliances? So those are just two additional items.
So just a little bit of education in regards to scanning. Scanning's done for crowns, bridges, orthodontics. In a scanning unit, the scanning unit is set up for a no-fail situation. So for you to scan a person in there, it would not move to the next section until this is correct. So whether it's direct or indirect supervision, I don't think it is a concern in safety, because the computer system is set up for safety issue in regards to getting the data that the dentist would need to have in diagnosing, sending off a case, and so forth.
I can see how there's like a sort of a conflict with the first part of the statement for that, and then the second part that says final inspection and approval of images by the dentist who treats the patient of record before fabricating an orthodontic appliance. And then I think in the future what might happen with orthodontic appliances is that maybe even the brackets and the archwire, actually I think it's happening now, the brackets and the archwire are actually produced from the scan. So in your opinion, do you think that that would be an accurate, that the scan would be accurate enough for, okay, thank you. For the fee cap, would that just be, so it sounds like the fee would be assessed for all RDAs even though there just might be a few of the preceptee, preceptors, so it wouldn't be increased only for the preceptor, preceptees.
That, the board only charges licensing fees for the cost of processing each type of application. So, presumably the increased fee for applications would only apply to preceptorship applications.
Is there any more comments from the council?
Is there still legislation, language in there that discusses who takes the OAP exam?
My recollection, and I apologize, this has been amended several times.
If I may?
Yes, go ahead.
I think once we get to public comment, we'll get some clarifications because this bill is ever evolving. In fact, I think it's in a hearing today.
It is.
So it might be useful to open it up to the public.
Yeah, if we don't get an answer from there, we'll find out.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to open up to public comments at this time on agenda item number 9.
Hi, Mary McCune with the California Dental Association, sponsor of the bill. Just to give you a really brief overview, and then I've marked down all the questions that DAC members have raised. The preceptorship and a lot of the other pathways included in this bill were really intended to try to address the workforce shortage issues that we're seeing in the dental assisting profession. And really the theme that we're trying to do is meet people where they're at. In a similar approach, we've really done that with the 8-hour infection control course, which is why we have now an 8-hour didactic only option. And so we really wanted to continue that, to be sensitive to areas around this vast state where an in-person IC course is not readily available, especially now that we have the requirement to complete this before exposure to blood and saliva. Oftentimes, these IC courses are available not on a rolling basis, so we want to get folks beside chairs that are adequately prepared and can achieve those safety standards immediately. I saw there was a concern around the DANB in the staff notes. We wanted to clarify that having the DANB CDA was really a qualification to get the RDA licensure, but not necessarily to continue having that. But I believe Kara responded to that too, saying that there is complete overlap in those CE requirements should the RDA decide to continue to keep their CDA moving forward. There are also some issues around scanning, and we just wanted to let the DAC members aware that in our next set of amendments, all references to scanning are going to be removed, and so that won't be a part of that. And additionally, the EF duties that Ms. Fowler raised were inadvertently removed and will also be added back in the next set of amendments. I can answer any additional questions.
So you're assuring all of the items for EF2 are going to stay in as a duty for EF2 at this
Yeah,
time?
that was never our intention. It was an editing error.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What was concerned about the scanning, and why is that being removed?
We're removing it so it's status quo of what the law is today. Any new references under the unlicensed dental assistant scope or the EF scope around the CAD/CAM are going to be removed, so it's going to remain what it is today. Again, we acknowledge there's clarity that needs to happen around scanning for the dental assisting profession, and we're happy to continue that discussion outside of this vehicle.
If I may, I just would again like to thank CDA for listening to the board's concerns, board staff concerns, and working collaboratively to address the workforce shortage.
Likewise, thanks.
I have one other question. I know that there's references to apprenticeship in the bill, and I'm wondering if that's why that was not left in as one of the pathways. Is that because it's automatically assumed it's a work experience pathway?
It was, where we're going with that is we're gonna be including ROP, adult ed, and apprenticeship as like a big umbrella for, alternative education. And so that will be included in there, and we are working on amendments to clarify, the Department of Ed reference to make sure that it is inclusive of, all the accrediting bodies that the Board of Education approves, so that way there's more clarity around that, because there's a lot of different pathways for that.
And then would you agree that it should be limited to only California apprenticeships?
I believe in our next set of amendments, we were gonna do US Department of Education to be more broad, because I think, I need to look at my notes, I thought there was a reference to California and the US, but our intention is to make it so the accreditation standards that apprenticeships do in California are reflected and encapsulated in the bill.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, at this time, would, oh, sorry.
Hello. Sherry Becker representing the Alliance. The Alliance appreciates CDA's openness in dialoguing regarding AB 481, but still opposes unless amended specifically regarding the removal of the lab requirement on the 8-hour infection control class. And we continue to work with CDA on suggestions on how to compromise. So thank you.
Hello, Dr. Lori Gallardi representing FADE. We support the CDA's proposal to add a significant alternative to the current 8-hour IC requirement while ensuring education, training, and public protection are central to the outcome. Employees are required to have annual Cal OSHA training, including bloodborne pathogen training. There are no total course hours, no hands-on elements, and no evidence to suggest that the absence of a hands-on lab or clinical component in any way negatively impacts the employee's ability to protect themselves or the public. Additionally, the Danby infection control exam is also knowledge-based with no lab or clinical component. The purpose is to ensure that individuals meet the minimal national standards for knowledge-based competence in dental infection prevention. Additionally, the CDA pathway to RDA licensure, we believe the military DA workforce in California, those teaching in CODA accredited dental assisting programs, DAs working in the veterans dental clinics, all have earned and maintained a CDA. For employment, this pathway would allow for mobility and recruitment of CDAs to becoming RDAs and joining the workforce in California. Additionally, as mentioned before, we were unclear as to how the CDA-RDA renewal process competes with, impacts, or replaces the opportunities of employment requirement to maintain both a CDA and an RDA. To the contrary, the CEUs, as mentioned before, can be used simultaneously for multiple licenses. So at this time, FADE encourages the DAC to support the AB 481 if amended.
30 seconds.
As those items related to IC and the CDA pathway will be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Is there any further public comments?
It's my first time making a comment. So my name is Amanda Sailing. I teach at Central California Dental Academy, and I just want to address the 8-hour infection control course. I teach that course specifically to a lot of people that are in the public, and I think the hands-on portion is so important. I teach people who have been in the field for over 10 years, and half of the things that we teach, they're not aware of. So, and I did attend an RDA approved course, and I didn't learn half of the things I learned in my 8-hour infection control course. I think it's an amazing course, and it does a lot for the public. And I do see, if you look at even our reviews for that course, you can see how people, it just opens their eyes up to things that they weren't aware of in the field. And I think the hands-on portion is very, very important. Thank you.
Seeing there's no more public comments?
Can we have a discussion about the infection control course and whether the council believes there should be a hands-on portion?
Epps Robbins, I think that it is very imperative to keep in the 8-hour infection control within these guidelines. Take in consideration of someone that is not knowledge base of how to transfer possibly a case from the lab to that lab technician. If they are not in advisement or the awareness of how to properly package something or to transfer, then this is not only the safety of that auxiliary, but it's also the safety of the public. When you have non-dental auxiliaries picking up cases just basically as transfers or runners or delivery services, and if things are not properly packaged, infection control is not being seen as something that needs to be advised or educated on, then this is a transfer of cross-contamination. Also, it is my concern that without an 8-hour infection control course, there are things that lack in auxiliaries that have been in the field for quite some time that have gotten kind of settled in ways. And with these 8-hour infection control courses that are mandatory, if this is to be said, they can kind of refresh their skills and keep it up for kind of up in the front forward of what is expected for cross-contamination and for infection control, which keeps our auxiliaries safe and it also keeps our public safe. It just keeps everyone safe by having these entities in place for the educational base. So it's just a concern for me.
Feller, I agree with previous statements. The hands-on component for the infection control is crucial. That's where I believe they really get a good foundational knowledge of the whole process. And so I would not like to remove that from the 8-hour infection control.
I'm also in agreement with Feller.
I agree as well, and I believe that there's other ways that these can be done possibly remotely with the technology that we have using. During the pandemic, we did perform lab procedures using video streaming and other technology-related methods to deliver information and evaluate students. So I think the lab portion is important, and I believe it should be and I'm reading the language that says no more than 2 hours. I'm not quite sure what that means. So wouldn't it be better if it would be a minimum of 2 hours versus no more than 2 hours?
I mean, you would certainly be within your purview as a council to make that recommendation. So if you were to take a support if amended position, for example, I'm not suggesting a position here, then you could articulate your specific concerns about amendments, many of which we've already discussed, including the infection control concerns, and advance those to the board, which would incorporate them into their recommendation, which would go through official and unofficial channels with respect to the legislature.
So if a motion is made, do we need to repeat all the corrections?
I don't know that we would have to articulate all of the specific amendments.
Well, this is why I'm saying you need to send your comments to the chair so that she can present them to the board for potential inclusion in their recommendation. Because it's, there's a lot of issues that have been raised today. It's very difficult for us to keep up with, our notes and memories and typing all of the issues that have been discussed. Well, we could do our best. I'm certainly hoping that CDA has taken decent notes about, the concerns that have been raised. And I think they have been very willing to work with us to make sure that this is an appropriate piece of legislation for practitioners and consumers. So do your best, send your comments and your proposed revisions over to the chair. She can then present them to the board, and we'll do what we can to include them in what will likely be a letter to the author, and what maybe a CC to the sponsors about board concerns.
So at this time, could I go ahead and do a support if amended and just make motion?
Yes, and I would say with feedback to be provided to the board. So support, if amended, based upon the feedback to be provided to the board for consideration.
So Rita Espinoza, I'm going to go ahead and do a support if amended from feedback from the Dental Assistant Council and Board.
Pacheco, second.
Is there any council add comments?
I just want to clarify if everyone is in support for the, instead of no more than 2 hours of laboratory instruction and infection control, to be a minimum of 2 hours of infection control for laboratory instruction.
For clarification, the delivery of that could be remote wet lab.
Agreed. I second the motion.
Is there any public comments?
Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. We speak in opposition of a remote lab with live. We would like to see live, hands-on versus some other type of virtual option for the lab. Thank you.
Amanda Sailing again. I think that the labs should be live, not virtual. I think that you do not get the same experience from a computer setting that you do hands-on. Thank you.
So can we propose
Ariane Trulay, representing the California Dental Association. Thank you guys for all the work on this. To clarify, Ms. Miyazaki, there's a lot of amendments coming up. A lot of your questions will be answered coming soon, but it is a minimum of 2 hours. It's not what you said. So in envisioning an alternative delivery of an 8-hour infection control class, the lab's not going away in the sense that what we envision is that the 2-hour lab will be done in our offices, that we have a checkoff list, and we have to sign off and do exactly what you're doing. When you look at your 8-hour, the class that you're giving, the 6-hour didactics, you're learning all of the steps. You're being taught that. And at the end, that last 2 hours, you're demonstrating that you know how to do it. It's no different than us taking CPR, taking a CPR. I learn a lot more doing it online. It's a lot more complicated to think about it. And then in the end, I have to demonstrate it. So that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at alternatives. I'm the dental director for a community health center, for a federally qualified health center. We have health centers throughout the state in very difficult remote locations. We should be able to have that education on site for our staff as soon as we hire them. And so what we're asking for is a pathway. If you want to bring somebody in, fine, no problem. We're happy to do that. But that's what we're looking at, alternative deliveries of education. And we learned that through COVID. Dental school didn't stop, medicine didn't stop, we continued, all these people graduated, and they're taking care of us. So thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and ask for the roll for a vote.
This is Morella Teran. I will call the roll. Epps Robbins,
Epps Robbins, support if amended.
Fowler,
Fowler, support if amended.
Miyasaki,
Miyasaki, support if amended.
Alagi absent, Pacheco,
Support if amended.
Bliss absent, Reed Espinoza.
Support if amended.
The motion passed.
All right, that concludes. I want to thank everybody. So agenda item number 9, update, is going to be moved to the Friday board so we can get together and have everything spot on for the board.
So to clarify, your update to the board during the board meeting will be moved to the Friday meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This is the conclusion of the Dental Assistant Meeting Council. It is adjourned. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.